Hello, everyone. Today I'm bringing you a deeply tragic case involving a young woman who had many dreams and aspirations, but whose life took a cruel turn before she could fulfill them. Our protagonist hails from the land of the rising sun, and her name is Koga Rikishisa. Born in 1990 in Sendai, Gunma Prefecture, Japan, Koga was a quiet but intelligent child. As she grew up, she attended Kitoku Kita High School in Gunma Prefecture. Koga had a passion for expressing her emotions through poetry, and with her intelligence, she had a natural talent for writing short poems from a young age. In her third year of high school, she achieved several accolades in national youth playwriting competitions, which solidified her desire to pursue a career in literature and the arts. She dreamed of standing on stage and becoming a talented actress. After graduating from university, Koga moved to Tokyo, 350 kilometers away from her hometown of Sendai, a city full of temptations. She brought her hopes to Tokyo, renting a small room in Miyabi, Nishi Ward in the western part of the city. Though it was a bit cramped and old, it was at least comfortable enough for one person to live in. After settling in, she quickly found an office job at a company in Tokyo. As time passed, Koga worked diligently, earning a stable income. However, the fire of her acting ambition never died down. Eventually, she left her office job to chase her dream. In May 2015, Koga successfully joined a theater group in Nakano, Tokyo. This was like a ray of hope shining into her otherwise bleak life. Koga loved this job so much that whenever she had the opportunity, she eagerly participated in rehearsals to prepare for future performances. 2 months after joining the group, Koga and Kanoki, the group's manager, developed feelings for each other and began dating. Although her initial step into the group was successful, Koga was still in training as a newcomer and hadn't yet had the chance to perform on stage officially, so her salary wasn't very high. To make ends meet, Koga often worked extra hours at an izakaya in the evenings. Even though her body was often tired at the end of the day, she felt fulfilled. She never shied away from hard work, always smiling, and was full of hope for the future. However, one summer day, a tragic accident abruptly cut short this hopeful young woman's dreams. The tragedy unfolded. On the summer day of August 24th, 2015, it was a beautiful Monday. Summers in Tokyo are quite hot, and that day, Koga wore a pink short-sleeved shirt with a black and white dress. She carried a black backpack on her shoulder and held a canvas bag in her hand as she quickly left her house to go to the theater to rehearse for an upcoming performance. Time flew by that day, and before she knew it, it was 7 p.m. Koga finished rehearsing and headed to the Shinjuku area. Earlier, she had arranged to meet a few female friends there that evening. They had a wonderful time together, staying out until late at night. It was well past midnight, and everyone decided it was time to head home, including Koga, who walked to the train station to catch a ride home. At 12:19 a.m., she arrived at the Nakano Shimbashi subway station, passed through the ticket gate, and walked alone into the silence of the night. 8 minutes later, Koga stopped at a convenience store near her home to buy a carton of soy milk before heading back. 13 minutes later, she sent a message online, a popular app in Japan, telling her friends that she was safe. However, after that message, no one was able to reach her again. The next day, Koga was supposed to go to the theater for rehearsal, but she didn't show up and didn't notify anyone. Her colleagues and manager called her multiple times, but there was no response. That night, at 11 p.m., she still didn't appear as planned, which was very unusual for her. Koga was known for being diligent and punctual in her work, and she had never been late, let alone absent. Her manager assumed that Koga might have had an urgent matter to attend to, which somewhat eased everyone's concerns. He promised to check in with her the next day. Another day passed, and Kito, Koga's boyfriend and the theater manager, felt increasingly uneasy after not being able to contact her for an entire day. That evening, he went to the restaurant where she worked to ask if Koga had shown up, but the restaurant manager informed him that she hadn't been seen all day. So he and the restaurant manager decided to go to Koga's residence. They also contacted the building manager. At 8 p.m., the three of them arrived at Koga's house. The door and windows were securely locked, although the lights inside were still on. They knocked on the door and called Koga's name, but there was no response. A strange smell lingered in the air, and sensing that something was seriously wrong, they contacted the local police. By 10 p.m., the police arrived at Koga's house. After knocking on the door and receiving no answer, the police asked the building manager for a spare key. With the police present, the door creaked open, revealing a horrifying scene. The young woman, Koga, lay on her back in the entranceway, completely naked, with signs of strangulation around her neck, a red line about 2 centimeters wide. Her body was cold and lifeless. As more police officers arrived at the scene, they immediately began their investigation. The victim was identified as Koga Rikishisa, 25 years old. The cause of death was determined to be strangulation by rope, leading to suffocation. The estimated time of death was between 12:50 and 1 a.m. on August 25th. There were no signs of sexual assault, but traces of saliva and body wash were found on her mouth and chest. Underneath her fingernails, there was a small piece of skin that didn't belong to the victim, suggesting that Koga had resisted her attacker. The forensic team extracted DNA from these samples, identifying it as belonging to a male. The police immediately gathered all the surveillance footage from around Koga's house from the night of August 24th to the morning of August 25th. They discovered that Koga had been seen in the area near her home around 12:30 a.m. In the victim's house, police found 2 mobile phones. After investigating, they found that the last message Koga sent was at 12:40 a.m., and after that, all messages and calls went unanswered. Forensic experts estimated Koga's time of death to be around 12:50 to 1 a.m. The tragedy struck not long after she arrived home. The police found a camera at the entrance of the victim's house, but unfortunately, it was just a fake device meant to deter thieves and didn't record any information. There were no clear signs of a struggle in the victim's house, but upon closer inspection, the police discovered that the clothes and backpack Koga was wearing on August 24th, along with her keys, remote control cover, and more than 10 other items, were all missing. A significant number of items had vanished, some of which were quite bulky. However, after reviewing the surveillance footage, the police found no vehicles parked nearby during the time of the incident, nor did they see anyone carrying a large amount of luggage. Therefore, the police suspected that the perpetrator might have lived nearby, allowing them to avoid cameras and carry the victim's belongings back to their home. The investigation then focused on the surrounding area. A neighbor reported hearing an argument from Koga's house one day in mid-July. This neighbor saw a man, about 30 years old, entering the victim's home and appeared to be intoxicated. The two argued fiercely, leading the police to suspect that this man might be the victim's ex-boyfriend, whom we'll call Mr. A. When the victim was found, her face had been covered with a cloth, a scene reminiscent of a crime committed by someone familiar with her. Because of this, the police also focused their investigation on people who knew Koga Rikishisa, hoping to find more clues. A faint trace. According to the investigation, the ex-boyfriend had broken up with Koga Rikishisa half a year before the incident. However, even after the breakup, Mr. A frequently sought out Koga, and he also had a history of domestic violence. Therefore, the police took a DNA sample from him for comparison, but the results showed that his DNA did not match that of the suspect found at the scene. Consequently, he was temporarily removed from the list of suspects. After a thorough review, the police found nothing suspicious, so they expanded their investigation to the surrounding residents. During this process, the police collected over 1,000 DNA samples from men for comparison, but none matched. The police also created a profile and publicly shared the details of the clothing Koga was wearing on the day of the incident, which included a pink short-sleeved t-shirt and a black and white checked dress. On that day, Koga was carrying a black backpack and a canvas bag approximately 40 centimeters in size with the words Old Navy printed in dark blue on a white background. The police released this information, hoping someone might come forward with a clue. By February 2016, more than half a year had passed since Koga was murdered, and a man named Renki came into the police's crosshairs. The reason they began to suspect him was that just a few days after Koga's case, he had moved away. His old address was only about 400 meters from Koga's house, and the real estate company where he worked was only 300 meters from the bar that Koga frequently visited. This led the police to feel that it was necessary to contact him. When reached, Renki said he had moved to Hokkaido and did not know Koga. The police requested a DNA sample from him, and he immediately agreed. Initially, they did not place much importance on this test, but the results left everyone astonished. His DNA was a perfect match with the culprits. The suspect, Takeda Renki, was born in 1978 in Hokkaido. His grandfather was an accountant who opened a specialized company in the area, and his parents inherited that business, so his life was somewhat comfortable as a child. Renki had an introverted personality and spoke little. During his school years, he was a top student and served as the class president in middle school. After graduating from high school, Renki aspired to learn a trade, but he was not accepted into any programs. In the following years, he frequently changed jobs. At the age of 25, Renki joined a real estate company as a sales representative. After 2 years of working due to not meeting sales targets, Renki decided to quit at the age of 27. In mid-July 2015, Renki had quit his job and was preparing to return to his hometown. However, it seemed that during this period, Renki had little activity until the end of August, just a few days after Koga was murdered, when he packed up and prepared to return home in early September. The truth of the crime. On March 12, 2016, 7 months after Koga's murder at 7 a.m., the police stormed in and subdued Renki. Although he initially resisted, the evidence the police had gathered was overwhelming. By the evening of the 13th, he had confessed to all his crimes. In his confession, he admitted that on the morning of August 24, 2015, he woke up at his parents' home. He had returned to Hokkaido for some time, and that day was the day he was to return to Tokyo, so he had to leave very early. Before he left, his mother handed him 60,000 JPY as travel expenses. It was already noon when Renki had to transfer to the line leading to the house he rented. That day was scorching hot, and after getting off the train, Renki felt uncomfortable, so he emailed his ex-girlfriend saying that he wanted to meet her again. Time quickly passed to midnight. Renki stood outside his house, smoking and humming, when he spotted Koga returning home. Wanting to exchange phone numbers with her, he stealthily followed Koga to the second floor of her apartment complex. Koga was unaware that someone was following her. However, Renki had already reached her door and forced his way in. This startled Koga, and Renki, in his panic, covered her mouth. Koga struggled violently, which caused him to panic even more, and he grabbed a rope, strangling her until she stopped breathing. Renki stood frozen for a moment, realizing that his hands were stained with blood. Overcome with fear, he stripped Koga of her clothes and bathed her to avoid leaving any traces on the victim. He then gathered all the items he had touched, including Koga's clothes, backpack, and bed sheets, covered her face with a cloth, and left her home, making sure to lock the door behind him. Realizing that if he stayed another minute he would surely end up in prison, Renki quickly packed up and moved out, discarding Koga's belongings in a nearby trash can before leaving Tokyo to return to his hometown. Through surveillance cameras near Koga's house, the police discovered a man wearing a black t-shirt and a black hat walking on the sidewalk on the night of the 24th. Upon further investigation, this man was identified as Renki, and with the DNA match, the case quickly went to trial. In February 2018, Renki underwent a court-ordered psychological evaluation, which revealed that he had suffered from schizophrenia. He claimed to have heard demons telling him that if he didn't act soon, there would be dire consequences, which led him to strangle the victim to death. However, psychological experts determined that Renki's personality disorder only caused social adaptation issues and did not affect his understanding of right and wrong. Moreover, his actions of cleaning the crime scene showed that he was fully aware of what he was doing at the time. The downfall of the evil. In March 2018, nearly 2.5 years after Koga Rikishisa was murdered, the court declared Takeda Renki guilty of premeditated murder and sentenced him to life imprisonment. However, the defense stated that they would appeal the verdict. By April 2019, the Supreme Court rejected the appeal and upheld the life sentence. The tragic death of Koga was truly a misfortune. She was a girl with dreams of becoming an actress who had traveled far to Tokyo to pursue them. She was only a few weeks away from her first stage performance. In a letter she wrote to her grandfather, she even mentioned how busy her life had become and told him not to worry. But before he could even read it, this tragedy struck. A young woman with so much potential met such a heartbreaking end. If this evil man had never existed, this tragedy might never have happened. And just like that, all the efforts, from her family's nurturing to her own struggles, crumbled due to a man with weak social awareness. It's a truly heartbreaking story. What are your thoughts on this case? Please comment and let us know. And now, goodbye and see you in the next case.